Yes, thank you. Have it.
Yes?
Have it. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting for November 20th. I would like, first of all, I'd like to thank you for this past year. There will be a new chair coming at the next meeting, so I'd like to thank you all for all your support. And also sitting to my left, I'd like to, thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that we have Mr. Farquhar sitting in for Ann Cheroff, and also we have alternate director Ryan that's here for Director Salmon. And I'd also like to welcome our new chair that is sitting in at our meeting. So we have Chair Aaron Stone that is sitting in and sharing the information and watching our meeting today, so I'd like to welcome him. I'd also like to acknowledge that we are in the territory of the Coast Salish people, and I'm looking for an approval of the agenda. So moved, second, is there any discussion? Yep.
I'd like for consideration a couple of new business items. Director Nicholson and I have a time-sensitive couple of grants and aids.
Thank you so much. Added to the agenda is new business 1 and 2. It's in front of everybody's. It's also at your seats. So 2 grants and aid. Thank you, Director Morrison. Okay. With those additions, I'd now like an approval of the agenda. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on now to the adoption of the minutes. I'm looking to Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the adoption of the minutes, prior to adopting the minutes, we need to make a correction. One of the items from the meeting of November 6th, the staff report had a figure and the recommendation had a different figure, so we need to correct that figure prior to adoption. So item R6, recommendation number 2 needs to be corrected, and the figure was 35,356, and we need to correct that to 35,565.
Okay, so moved. Is there a seconder? I need a seconder. Great, thank you.
R6?
Yes.
2?
Yes. It just numbers, the numbers were mixed around, but we need that correction. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Now, adoption of the minutes as corrected. Moved. Seconder? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Ms.
Thank you,
Harrison?
Madam Chair. There is none.
Okay, we'll turn now to the public input period. The instructions are written on the screen, and I'd like to welcome Mr. Evans.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I'm sorry to see or hear you're leaving this post.
Not leaving, not quite yet.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a few comments on minutes from the 6th of November Electoral Area Services Committee meeting, R15, number 19, function 488, Shawnigan Basin Society funding. At the last meeting, we discussed how Area B Director, with the approval of this committee and the CVRD Board, zero funded the Shawnigan Basin Society Function 488 and redirected it to her personal grant and aid fund. The Area B Director has now a total of $101,670 planned in her grant and aid fund, which she didn't have to go to the public for with an AAP. This is a huge amount of money, and perhaps the CVRD should set limits for these funds unless approved by an AAP. The Shawnigan Basin Society submitted a 5-year financial plan, and it was generally well received by the Regional Area Commission. The Shawnigan Basin Society has supported our director and the CVRD on many projects in this last year, and yet has not received any funding. The members have operated on their own dime and that of many generous citizens and businessmen. In fact, we agreed to work with everyone. In fact, a Shawnigan Basin Society member, Dr. Ralph Turner, has agreed to give a talk to the Shawnigan Residents Association tomorrow night, and this is on sediment collection and testing, which we did all last year. We have shared our facility freely with other groups in the community and intend to maximize the use of the facility as much as possible in the future. We all know money can be leveraged by having the support of the CVRD. Whether funding for the Shawnigan Basin Society comes from Function 488 or the new regional
30
money
seconds.
doesn't make a difference to us, but the manager of the Environmental Services, Kate Miller, strongly advised to the regional services that the money for the Shawnigan Basin Society should come from Function 488. The Shawnigan Basin Society asks you to please reinstate Function 488 or other funding and support for us as we support you.
Good, you had that down to 3 minutes down pat. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you very much,
Evans.
Madam Chair.
Is there anyone else that wishes to address the committee?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair.
Welcome.
My name is Ed Weeb. I'm a Shawnigan Lake resident for about 20 years. I'm a member of the Shawnigan Research Group and a director of the Shawnigan Basin Society. Since the CVRD directors will be asked to vote on the funding for the Basin Society tomorrow, although it's an Area B function, all the directors are voting on it, I would ask that the directors use this time to see what the Shawnigan Basin Society is all about by going to our website and look at, number one, the projects and activities of the Basin Society in the last 5 years. 2, the new list of Basin Society directors and their biographies. 3, the 5-year plan of the SPS that was presented to the CVRD. Then consider that our CVRD director has reduced our funding to a $0 amount and is proposing the same for next budget year. That's harsh. I did a very quick check of the taxes per 100,000 assessed residential value for services in Area B and for the years 2017 and 2019. One line item sticks out. The SBS in 2017 had a rate of $2.66 per $100,000 of evaluation. That increased my taxes about $12. In 2019, it is listed as $0. For comparison, there is another line item, grants and aid. In 2017, that value is listed as 53 cents. And in 2019, it is listed $2.02, an increase of $1.49. For me, that is an increase in taxes for about $7.50. In my biased opinion, the $12 for the SPS is better investment in Area B than the $7.50 for grants and aid. Madam Chair, I'm asking that the CVR directors reconsider and vote no to zero funding for the SBS, and then move to reinstate the annual 50,000 funding that was taken away. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wiebe. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the committee?
Hello, I'm Sheila Bell Irving from Shawnigan Lake. People know me as She Mama. I'm going to say hello to all the people watching on live feed, if it's working today. And I'm going to talk about community. So when I first started blocking trucks in Shawnigan Lake in 2015, there was 5 of us.
Can I just get you to step back from the microphone just a tad?
Okay, there
Thank
was
you.
5 of us. The following day, there were 7 of us. The following day, there was 10 of us. By the end of it, we had hundreds of people that were showing up on a daily basis at 6:30 in the morning in the pouring rain or the snow or the freezing cold to stand in front of trucks because we all had a common goal, and that was to protect our water. I've stood with people who were liberals, conservatives, NDPs, homophobes, racists. I didn't care at that point because we all need to drink water. We all need to protect our water. And as far as I'm concerned, taking the money and the funding away from Tax 488 is not being a community-minded person. It is actually hurting the community. You people of the CVRD paid for 13 Ways to Kill Your Community. It wasn't a manual. Now, what I want you to do is to reconsider this, and please vote no to giving us zero funding, because we are doing such good work in the community. Last night, we had a talk about what's going on in the Souk Lake Hills and the logging, and people didn't know. We had new people show up at our office. That office has been used by our community for years. When the people who were on the front line had problems because we were having to deal with the trauma of seeing what was going on in our community and the trucks dumping poison above us, we had a counseling session in that office to train us on how to deal with the trauma. That office has been used by our directors for years. That office has been used by the APC. The office has been used by community. Now, it should not be taken away, and it should be restored, because that office is giving people a place to go. The CVRD sent people to us when their wells were testing at 16 times the level of lead. Why? You sent them to us. If you're not going to fund us, how are you going to continue doing what you do if we can't do what we're going to do? We should all be working together. That is what community is all about. It's not about us or them. It's just us. And I am sad to see division in our community. And I'm sad to see such brilliant people and scientists
30 seconds.
regulated to a zero funding and people having to pay for our rent out of our pockets. We're volunteers here. We share our knowledge freely, and we do it because it's the right thing to do. The right thing to do is to restore our funding and let us continue doing our good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure how much time we have left. Maybe you could short that. Welcome.
Hello, Madam Chair. I'm Linda Gregory. I am also a member of the Shawnigan Research Group and a director of the Shawnigan Basin Society. And I'd like to speak to the minutes of this meeting, we're in December, not yet, November 6, 2019. Further, I do not have time to provide background information on the Shawnigan Basin Society, except to say the Society has had some very high points and a few dry years. But the present Society is a mix of old and new people with a wide range of talents. This includes at least 3 members who have proven ability at applying for and receiving grant monies. And in fact, at present, we are preparing a list of possible grant agencies for which we will submit relevant applications. But the grant monies only cover specific parts of specific and usually short-term projects. We need monies for ongoing expenses. These include office expenses so that we have a place to meet with locals, to share with other interested groups, to work with other supporting and co-working groups, to host public seminars, to hire an administrative assistant, and to use to guarantee the long-term, not short-term, water and sediment quality work in Shawnigan Lake. And we also need to address the significant problems of the invasive species, notably the milfoil, after the rather untimely and not very productive work done last summer. This is critical given the potential impacts of the various land use activities in the Shawnigan Basin. We are therefore asking this commission to reinstate the 488 funding so that we can proceed with our plans explained in our 1 and 5-year plans. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have 3 minutes left in the public input period. Is there anyone else that wishes to address the committee? Seeing none, I'll move on. I heard a few bebops. I'm going to remind everyone with your electronic devices, if you could put them on silent, please. Thank you, Mr. Evans. Okay, we will move on now to correspondence. We will move on to C1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C1 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, regarding the Malahat Legion Branch 134, Shawnigan Lake. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area B, Shawnigan Lake, in the amount of $1,000 be provided to Malahat Legion Branch 134, Shawnigan Lake, to support the new community sign.
Moved? Seconded? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to C2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C2 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill, in the amount of $500 be provided to Victoria Foundation, Garden House Foundation Fund to assist with costs of advertising the Garden House Foundation Fund annual book sale.
Moved? Is there a seconder? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? There's a discussion.
Very quick.
Director Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very quickly, for those who don't know about the Garden House Foundation, it's run by Jim and Jackie Barker. Jim Barker was chair here for a while. And basically, they collect books from all over the place. The children from Bonner School and Brentwood College help out. They raise about $14,000 a year, which goes, directly to the Victoria Foundation under their umbrella. And so far, the total in there is close to $1 million. There are no wages, there are no salaries, everything goes to them, and that's given out to local charities. And the way it's managed is that if the book sale ever stopped, the amount that's paid out to local charities will continue forever as long as the returns are made. So it's a good system, and it works very well. The only expenses they have are the advertising in the local newspapers, and that's what this is for.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a great fund too. They do a lot of good work. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on to C3, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item 3C is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area E. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, in the amount of $3,500 be provided to Cowichan Community Policing to assist with program funding.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on now to C4, Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item C4 is a grant and aid request for Electoral Area G. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid Electoral Area G, Saltaire Gulf Islands, in the amount of $2,700 be provided to Thetis Island Ratepayers Association to support community trails, education kiosk, and durable metal signage, and the Thetis Island Forbes Community Hall for audio equipment to assist that hard of hearing in the new community hall.
It's been moved, seconded. Any discussion? Director Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to pass these funds on to Thetis Island. Over the last 7 years, there's been funds collected from the Thetis Island, and they haven't received funds back to assist them, and this now evens out between Saltaire and Thetis Island, the amount that's been collected over the last 7 years. Thank you.
Okay. Call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Moving on now to information.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under information, IN1, there are, what is that, 4 sets of minutes? No, 3 sets of minutes for information. One is Electoral Area C, Cobble Hill Advisory Planning Commission minutes of October 29th, 2019. Number 2, Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam-Glenora Advisory Planning Commission minutes of July 9th, 2019. And number 3, Electoral Area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam-Glenora Advisory Planning Commission minutes of October 8th, 2019.
Thank you. This is for information. Seeing no hands up, we'll move on to reports. R1, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R1 is a report from the Building Inspection Division, and it's their October 2019 report for information.
So this is for information. Mr. McDonald is here. Are there any questions? Director Nicholson.
I think I had a question, just let me look at this. I thought it was interesting on the inspections per month relative to sorry. Well, I guess there's no correlation between inspections per month and building permits. It seemed like there was an awful lot in I, and I didn't think there was that much activity in I. Or H, maybe I was thinking about. I don't know, it just didn't seem
So
to have any.
your question is there's a high percentage of
It just
inspections?
didn't seem to be a correlation between inspections and the number of building permits in different areas and the number of inspections that seem to be going on. I just was wondering.
Mr. McDonald.
I'll do my best to answer that question. As permits are issued throughout the year and even previous years, you can see when people call for inspections at various times, so it may not have a direct correlation in that month or even a month preceding that. So you may have seen a bunch of applications even in a prior year, and just depending on the stage of building and when they were asking for those inspections. So that could be a misleading fact when you're looking at that, and I can understand why you would ask that question.
Director Nicholson, a follow-up?
No.
Okay, you can turn off
Thank
your
you.
microphone. Thank you. Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The one number that stood out for me was the decrease in new housing starts. So is there any rationale, do you think, behind that?
Through you, Madam Chair. A very good question, but very difficult question to answer. There are some subdivisions I'm aware of coming online soon, so we have seen maybe there's fewer lots to build on. That can influence it, time of year can influence it. But other than that, it's just on public demand.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions for you, thank you, Mr. McDonald. We'll move on to R2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R2 is a report from the Development Services Division regarding application number DVP 19E03 for 3367 Glenora Road in relation to parcel identifier 000-925-918, and there is a recommendation before you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Munn.
Good afternoon, committee chair, committee members, public staff. Here to report on R2 Development Variance Permit DVPE 03. The purpose of the Development Variance Permit application is to decrease the required setbacks for an agricultural building, a barn, at 3367 Glenora. The required front parcel line setback is 30 meters, and the required interior side parcel line setback is 15 meters. The requested front decrease is for 2 meters to leave a 28-meter setback. and the requested interior side decrease is 12.1 meters to leave a 2.9 meter setback. The applicant indicates they have had limited options to site the building because of a septic field in the east and of a lot poorly accessible rear yard. Note that there are letters of support received from owners on properties to the immediate west, east, and south. And the applicant is here to take any questions.
Sure. Does the applicant wish to add anything? No? Okay. I'm turning to the director of the area. I believe it's Director Nicholson.
Can I ask a question?
Mr. Munn is here.
Could you explain why building codes don't apply to agricultural buildings, even in residential zones?
I think the best person through the chair to explain that is the manager of inspections and enforcement.
Mr. McDonald.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Agricultural buildings are only required to be built to the farm code, so we have only a siting permit, and the expectation is that the applicant will build to the farm code. We do not do any inspections other than to see compliance that it is actually a farm building.
Thank you. Follow-up, Director Nicholson?
Sure, so who does the farm code? Who checks the farm code?
It's up to the owner. The compliance is on the owner.
So there's no inspection, there's no other level of government that deals with that?
No.
Okay, so what kind of liability are owners taking on when they?
The owner assumes full liability.
Okay.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I turn again to you, Director Nicholson.
Move the recommendation.
The recommendation's been moved and it's been seconded. Any more discussion? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. That goes to the next board. Oh dear, I forgot to write that one down. If anybody can, just to let the applicant know the next board that it would be going to. 27th, November 27th, thank you. Is that a 1:30 or a, well, anyway, November 22nd, that goes to the next board if the applicant is still here. Welcome, Mr. Tippett. Moving on to R3.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wow, this thing seems to be loud today. Maybe I'll put it down here. This is an application for an agricultural land reserve exclusion. It's for a property immediately adjacent to, I guess it's more or less south of the existing island tractor facility in Electoral Area E on the Trans-Canada Highway. This is on the left-hand side, sort of the general location. I think most of you will know it because you probably drive by it frequently. And then a very crudely drawn subject property map, the red sort of polygon being the area that would, it's an approximation of the area, roughly 0.8 hectares or 2 acres that would be removed from the ALR if this application is successful. And here is the entire subject property. So the area that on the previous slide was outlined in red, you can see on the aerial photo, is largely cleared. And that probably is a fairly good approximation of the area that is proposed to be excluded from the ALR. The purpose of the exclusion obviously is to allow the business to expand into that area. Just a couple more images, one taken by another staff member from on the site looking out towards the highway. That's the one on the left, and then a Google Street View one from the other side. I'm sure it's a familiar site. So the quick planning analysis summary. The present site of the Island Tractor business is zoned I-5 and it's not in the ALR. The applicant wishes to remove another roughly equivalent area to the existing site from the ALR to the south. The plan designation is agricultural of the subject property, and the zoning is A1. The applicant hasn't requested at this time a plan or OCP amendment or zoning amendment application, yet they wish to have the decision from the Agricultural Land Commission rendered first, and I totally can understand that because OCP and zoning amendment applications are expensive and only a partial refund is available in the event that they're unsuccessful. And essentially, the Agricultural Land Commission has veto power over this situation if they decide that they're either not going to allow the exclusion or not to allow a non-adhering use within the ALR, then the application for OCP amendment and rezoning would be moot. And so staff is totally understanding and in agreement with their not having applied at this time. Regarding the ALR exclusion application, an agrologist report has not been submitted to support the exclusion request, but the information we have based on, I think, 1 to 20,000 scale aerial photo interpretation is that property is 100% in class 4 on a class 7 or a 7 scale of 7 where 1 is the best and 7 is the worst. However, it can be improved to class 2 with some of the limitations managed, mostly just irrigation, I think, for the most part. We believe that the application to expand this business has considerable merit. I mean, I think people understand the business to be an important feature of the agricultural community. It probably supplies an awful lot of equipment and other services, maintenance and so on to the agricultural community, so we're supportive of that. However, the staff at least is of the opinion that it's unlikely to receive ALC support for exclusion, and so our recommendation actually is that the application be referred to the ALC with a recommendation to deny the exclusion, but to rather support a non-adhering use. What that means is, it used to be called non-farm use. It's a new term they have in the ALR. It means the land would remain in the ALR, but the I-5 type uses would be permitted, which then would, on my last point here, if it was approved, bylaw applications presumably would follow, and the board would be asked to consider amending the OCP and the zoning accordingly. So in summary, that's the recommendation. Now, I should add here, oops, I went too far ahead. Let me go up one. If, you know, my take on this was it was probably preferable to not support the exclusion, but rather just that a non-adhering use be permitted. If it's the committee's preference that they support the exclusion, but if the exclusion is not supported by the Agricultural Land Commission, that they then default to number 2 on here, which is that we would support a non-adhering use. That's an equally appropriate, I think, in my opinion, position to take. So I just wanted to point that out. My recommendation was based on my knowledge of recent decisions for exclusion in the ALR, and I felt if we sent it on just as an ALR exclusion application with no further contingencies looked at, it didn't have a good chance of success. So that was my reason for this recommendation.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to add anything? If you'd like to come to the podium.
I do, thank you.
Welcome.
Madam Chair, members of the committee.
If you could speak into the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Tim Gallivan, and I'm here representing Island Tractor. Also with me is Gord Fraser, who is the past manager of Island Tractor and has extensive experience with the equipment and knows the farm community quite well. If I could, I'd like to begin by addressing the staff report. So the report uses the absence of soil information as the primary reason not to support the application. It says, typically, applicants for ALR exclusion are encouraged by the ALC and the CVRD to supply a site-specific agrologist report in support of the application. The applicant was so advised and has chosen not to do so. We suspect this may interfere with the prospects of a successful ALR decision, and the recommendation takes that into account. So this is what the ALC says about professional reports. They're not required. Professional reports are not required for ALC applications. However, if a professional report is submitted, the ALC requires consistency in the quality and format of technical reports. With respect to the CVRD encouragement to supply a report, the exclusion application was prepared and submitted through the ALC client portal, including all required documentation, photos, proof of advertising, in October of 2018. Through this portal, it was confirmed the application was complete and had been referred to local government, CVRD, for review. So if professional reports, including soil analysis, are not required by the ALC in reviewing exclusion applications, and the CVRD staff never mentioned it until 3 weeks prior to coming before this committee, it seems rather unfair to use it as a basis to recommend against the application, particularly given that it is not a requirement of the ALC. This report also suggests the reason we are seeking Electoral Area Service Committee support prior to a rezoning application and OCP amendment is financial. It is not. It is strictly about timing and efficiency. It has already been over a year and the ALC has not even reviewed the application. Contrary to the report, we believe the merits of the application are compelling. Island Tractor is the only full-service agricultural equipment and maintenance facility serving the South Cowichan area. Its growth over the past number of years coincides directly with the growth of agricultural production region-wide. If this is to continue, as we all hope and expect it will, Island Tractor needs to expand to meet this growing demand. I think that viewpoint is supported by what Mr. Tippett said and is a general consensus with the people that we talk to anyhow. Going forward, the business needs certainty and flexibility within the framework of the existing zoning to ensure it remains viable and can meet the needs of farmers and hobbyists. Non-farm use approvals, as recommended by staff, tend to be very specific and could hinder or limit the ability of Island Tractor to serve its customers in the future. Governments and government policy changes are inevitable, which leaves non-farm use approvals subject to cancellation or at least more restrictive conditions. Circumstances might arise where business ownership changes. Having one business operate on 2 parcels of land under different zoning, with one being in the ALR, materially affects the value and marketability of the business. The septic tank and field for Island Tractor currently rests within the proposed exclusion area. This condition is covered by a registered easement and is a charge against Island Tractor that should be rectified, but cannot be unless the exclusion application is successful. The staff recommendation to not support the exclusion application based on suspicion the ALC may reject the application because there is no accompanying agrologist report is not credible. We ask this committee instead to support option 2, which is to support the exclusion as described in the staff report. And with that, I will end my
Thank you so much. I
presentation.
have one director has a question. Is it for staff or the applicant? Director Acton.
I think it's for
Staff.
staff.
Mr. Tippett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a complicated application, and I get the non-farm use request, and I too kind of question the request to ALC for saying that we do not support it. But my question is, so I was in a meeting yesterday with a whole bunch of bylaw people, community who's really upset about what's happening on ALR. So to me, it would make more sense if we could move towards the zoning belonging in the CVRD. Then we have, so if it is excluded, does it actually become our jurisdiction instead of the ALC?
Mr. Tippett.
Madam Chair, it's shared jurisdiction at the moment, and whether or not the land's excluded from the ALR or a non-adhering use is approved there, the zoning still would have to follow suit. So whether it's excluded or not, some sort of non-agricultural zone would have to be applied to the property eventually to make expansion of the business possible. So the thing I was concerned about in processing this as just a straight yes/no exclusion application is if it were sent down by this committee to the ALC with a recommendation in favor of exclusion, or with no comment for that matter, based on previous decision-making patterns of the ALC, I don't think it would have had a lot of chance. And so that my sole purpose in having point 2 that you see on the recommendation here was to make sure that even in the worst case scenario, where an ALR exclusion was supported, there was still an opportunity to have this, the needs of the business.
Follow-up, Director Haim?
I worry about the usage of current OCP because it implies a document that is current and Area H's is not. When you talk about the engagement further for the neighborhood plan, what kind of process, meetings, community groups have been discussed, considered with regards to that, and in terms of the length of that engagement as well?
Through the chair, the communications plan for the modernization hasn't been fully developed yet. We will be engaging with the APCs on components of that going forward and the particular stakeholders within each area. The neighborhood plans will heavily involve the residents within the electoral area.
I'll move to Director Nicholson, Morrison, and Acton. If I see any other, and Smith.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very clear, helpful presentation. Similar to Alternate Director Haynes' comments, though, Area E is dealing with a very out-of-date OCP, and then was in fact was in the middle of reviewing its OCP. And so I think at this point it's really important for Area E to have some special, for you to plan to do meetings in each of the neighborhood areas, so the 4, to explain what's happened, because there's been sort of a, everyone is completely up in the air and have been for several years now about what's going on. And so I think that we need to have community-specific meetings about the HOCP and then the modernization process to kind of set it up for the future, or I think we may, people will be very uncomfortable. So I think that that would be a smart, proactive thing to do at this point, and I suspect that that might be the same for other areas. So I think we should be planning for more than 4 general presentations, but maybe more meetings in each of the communities that are a little bit more specific to the community.
Through the chair, so staff can add additional sessions on. The suggestion at this time is to go through the first 4, find out what works, what's not working, and the type of response, reevaluate, come back with a staff report making recommendations on additional open houses. That would be my recommendation at this time.
Is there a follow-up, Director Nicholson?
Well, I actually, for Area E, would like to move that staff provide 4 Area E specific community meetings regarding the HOCP and the Cowichan Coxsila LAP. If someone would second that.
Not seeing anything. Director Morrison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Breen, and I've got a little preamble here in that I'm a little concerned about what we're going to end up with at the end of this, and I've been fully supportive of this process. I think clarity, brevity are important things. The regulation is in the zoning, and this is a aspirational document, and my electoral area got to just about adopting a new OCP, which would have been 42 pages, maps included. Just doing a little bit of quick math here in that we have a 510-page document. You take the maps, the 240 pages of maps, we've got 270 pages of text. You divide that by 7 OCPs, we've got, almost 40 pages of text per electoral area, or per OCP. Are we densifying and clarifying by producing a document of this nature? And I'm serious about this in that I've just had a resignation of a 15-year long-serving APC member because we, had a draft and people were pretty happy with the draft, and it seems like every meeting that staff go out to, we end up adding another 20 or 30 pages to this document. So what's our purpose here is to get some harmonization and some common language so that people that read the document have some consistency throughout the area, and yet we are making a small novel. Well, maybe that's not a small novel. So are you, my question through to Ms. Breen, are we trying to keep this manageable and digestible, or are we going to end up with something that will be unwieldy and lengthy?
Ms. Breen.
Through the chair. The 510 pages or so includes the front end, which is about 85 pages, and the local area plans. What we'll find in the modernization, we're anticipating already, we're probably going to reduce that amount almost in half again. Particularly with the development of the neighborhood plans. We'll see that the local plans will dissipate, more will go into the regional plan, and these neighborhood plans will stand out, so to speak. One of the challenges that we've had in balancing feedback from different electoral areas and is that some want very, very short, tight documents, and others have asked us to add more information on sustainability and resilience. So it's been quite a balancing task in the harmonization. And I hope that addresses your concerns somewhat.
Follow-up, Director Morrison? Moving on to Director Acton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had a slide and it said the values and regional trends. So is that referring to modernization? Because I guess that's where I see in community a lot of, a bit of a holding pattern with the bylaws, and how will they, how, when, and where will the bylaws become more modernized, for example, like backyard chickens and secondary suites. So those are items that I know are important to people, or perhaps even like working from home and home-based businesses.
There's a lot of anticipation on the zoning bylaw modernization. We are in the process of harmonizing. We're ghostwriting the harmonization of the zoning bylaw right now, and those matters are of paramount interest in the communities. So what you'll see is with the modernization of the OCP is we'll be bringing in the draft modernization of the zoning bylaw at the same time. They have to be consistent, and those conversations will be in earnest. So anticipate that fall of 2020, early 2021.
Follow-up, Director Acton?
Well, another question, kind of comment, and to Director Morrison's point of creating a document that's supposed to be streamlining and more efficient and easier for the planning department, was it actually 500 pages plus the maps, or?
It's 500 pages plus 240 pages of maps.
I thought Director Morrison actually presented it, it's 240, so that's even bigger. So so obviously if a community can have a 40-page official community plan, somehow we should be able to harmonize them with, say, 150 or somewhere 200 even. Sounds pretty lofty. Who's going to be cutting stuff out or simplifying this?
Through the chair, just for clarification, are you saying in the modernization or continuing in the harmonization?
In the harmonization, because the goal is to streamline it and speak to where are we the same. So this doesn't actually sound like that. Did that happen?
Through the chair, well, there's 700 pages that are gone right now. We could take the time, and there'll be a staff report coming when we're advising EASC of the results of the referrals, and that will go along the line of providing some options of we can further harmonize, spend more time on that process. We could go directly into the modernization, go into this process, or we can draw a line in the sand and adopt and then go into the modernization. So yes, we could make additional changes. It will take more time. From some areas, we're hearing that they want an adopted bylaw and they want to get into the zoning right away. And they want that those changes right now. Others are expressing they would like, additional cuts. So can we make more? Yes, we could.
Follow up, Director Acton? Director Smith?
Yeah.
Thank you. This has been a problem in my area, the HOCP. Just my area planning commission, you guys have all listened to me in the past, explain that my commission has walked away from the table in the past. They've sat at the meetings in the area here, but have not participated. They found that this process didn't meet what is even written on the CBRD's OCP developing an official community plan. It states here, developing an OCP is a community-based grassroots effort. Planning staff works with local volunteers appointed by the CBRD board in creating and updating the OCP. Because it is important to reach out widely into the community, the CVRD employs other measures to tap into community opinions. These measures include questionnaires, open houses, community meetings, and workshops. So when you look back, we haven't had that. We're missing our whole grassroots. We were elected as officials in our communities as directors to sit at this table, and we have not been out in our communities bringing the grassroots to this process. Having one APC chair per electoral area sitting at the table while there's a facilitator and staff has been great. They've done an amazing job, but we're definitely not including the public and our communities, and we represent them. So if we're not going to do grassroots, my OCP is out of date, and there's probably 3 OCPs out of date. There's other ones that are just hanging in the balance, and every time we see a land use come forward that we're authorizing it on an old OCP. If their OCPs are ready to roll as a bylaw, we should be moving them along and helping them get moving along in their process.
Do you have a question for staff, Director Smith?
No, I'm having a rant.
I just wondered if there was
Is it
a
okay
question.
if I have a rant
I
about
just thought there was a
something
question.
that we are sitting here and we've been handed this, even as new directors, it came out of the blue that we didn't even know it was happening until all of a sudden we get a notice there's a meeting. I mean, I've attended the meetings. Director Nicholson has been at the meetings, but it's not been even including us. So if we don't include the communities and we don't include the directors, how do we go out and say to our communities, these are small communities, some of them, and we have very small, or we have needs that are not requiring 500 pages of a document. So my question is, why didn't we start with grassroots where we actually were elected from?
Ms. Breen, I think that Mike Tippett, Mr. Tippett, is you? Then I have Director Kuhn.
So this program was initiated with a report to the, I guess it was a previous board's version of this committee, with a detailed work program that described that what we were trying to do was simply concatenate existing policy. The idea being that the detailed community engagement would occur in the modernization phase, not in the harmonization phase. The goal being to get the bylaws under a single, or into a single document before that was to occur. And the work program is all predicated on that being the case, that we stick to the existing documents, use that as the basis of developing a single combined OCP, which would then be used as a springboard to get into the more detailed community engagement and renewal of the documents and the policy, or at least consideration of possibility of changes. So staff has been working to that work, approved work plan that was presented, I guess, a year and a half or 2 years ago now. I can't remember exactly when. And that's why it doesn't have all the details that are described in the OCP, or about OCPs on the website, which are in fact in reference to OCP updates, which is a very different thing. That's not what this is. This is a very distinct project that's really intended to just merge all the existing documents together. So I hope that provides the answer.
Director Kuhn, and then Director Haim. Alternate Director Haim, and then Nicholson.
The way I understand an OCP, and from what I've learned and observed so far, I think an OCP, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe Mr. Tippett can correct me, an OCP is supposed to be a guiding document. That's all it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be totally laid down the law in every little corner and niche and whatnot. My impression is what we're trying to do maybe, and I might be wrong, but that's the impression I have, is we're trying to nail everything down. And we're trying to stipulate this is to be done then and there. You can only do this. The more we box ourselves in with an OCP that covers just about everything, the more OCP corrections we're going to have afterwards, because we will get applications that will not apply to this OCP, and yet we want to be able to process them. So there'll be changes to the OCP constantly, and the more we stipulate the OCP in every little detail, the more changes we get afterwards, and it'll be a bloody nightmare the way I foresee it. Anyway, I might be wrong, but an OCP, the way I see it, is guiding. It's a guide for the community, and it's a guide for the regional district and for the applicants, and that is it. And not every little detail pointed out.
Alternate Director Haim.
Thank you. When I came on board with this, the harmonization makes perfect sense to me, going from multiple documents down to one document. No issue at all there. My problem is, as Director Smith was talking about, is that grassroots portion of it. And I understand why it doesn't apply at the harmonization stage, because it's not meant to create a new document. It's just to create a document that reflects the old documents. The comments that are being made in my area by some of the interested groups is that it feels very much top-down, that there's been no engagement on the detailed level, and as I explained to them about the process, they settle down with regards to the harmonization side of things. But as we move into that modernization, and I like the word renewal in terms of the OCPs, they're going to demand that grassroots conversation and engagement, and an open house doesn't cover it. Things like workshops were mentioned. That would cover it, or begin to cover it in that regard. The other part that worries me is one of the comments is about the changes to the zoning, because the zoning has to be consistent with the OCP, and so therefore if there's not the proper guidance in the OCP, the zoning that's going to come out of it is going to be wrong and result in multiple changes of zoning as things go forward. And then my last concern is, as it goes through this process, we all feel like we're in a holding pattern. I've got residents that are looking at our existing OCP in Area H, which when it comes to home-based business and the regulation of it within the zoning bylaw, they don't believe it provides the protections that other areas currently have, because our OCP is very old. So we're kind of caught. I've got people saying, well, we should really consider updating the home-based business parts of the zoning bylaw, but I feel like, is it wasted time to even consider that right now, because we're coming down the road with all these other changes, but they can't wait 2 years. And so we end up potentially trying to address something that's an old document that may result in changes. And so we're looking for some guidance on how to handle those things as well.
Ms. Breen?
Through the chair, if there are changes that in the community's mind, in your mind, that need to happen on the zoning bylaw prior to, say, 2021, mid-2021, then they can be raised, and there's something then that would go to Mike in terms of the work program of staff. So there are certain things, and Mike's going to address that.
Mr. Tippett?
Yeah, Corley's absolutely correct. We're shortly going to have some additional capacity to do short-term, maybe triage, for want of a better term, because we know we have a lot of issues out there, and yes, Area H in particular has been laboring under some of our oldest documents. With Keith going back to the Community Planning Division as soon as our Development Services Manager arrives, which I think is on December 9th, so it's coming up imminently. So you know, without saying that Keith will do the work, we will have capacity to do it, and maybe he will do the work. So yes, absolutely. So you don't need to wait. If there's an emergent issue, feel free to talk to me or Corley or anyone in the community planning, including Keith soon, and we'll do our best to help.
Director Nicholson. Oh, follow up, Director, Ms. Breen?
Just a note to say, I have 2 large file folders in my office. One that just has potential zoning bylaw amendments that staff are sending me, the community are sending me, the APCs are sending me, and another one on modernization. So send us an email, and all of those are being captured. They're guarded in our file folders. We've got a long list, but those things that you want attended with earlier, flag it. Yeah. Thank
Great,
you.
Thank you, Director Nicholson.
Thank you. I have followed this process very closely, and I have read the HOCP, and it's amazing. It is very good, and it is clear. It's it's a good read. Yeah, I recommend it. For the Christmas holidays, you'll enjoy it.
Thank you. I'll look forward to that.
And, we have a problem. We know we're completely out of date on a lot of stuff, and we need to modernize. So I am completely behind this project. But I agree very much that the community, needs to be brought into this sooner rather than later. Because we're trying to set this up for the modernization and the zoning modernization, which is really where the rubber hits the road. And so we need to start to engage them and bring them into the process now. And I think each of our communities wants to feel heard themselves as their community. They don't want to be lumped in. I don't think the Satlam people would appreciate being lumped in with the people in Honeymoon Bay or whatever. I mean, the issue is they feel that they're a community and they need to be heard. And so I think we really need to think about doing some focused presentations with each of the communities. And I think if we don't do that, we're just asking for trouble down the road. In addition to that, if I recall, a year ago, Area E, it was acknowledged that Area E had been in a review process and that we were to take what work we had done and incorporate it into the new HOCP. So Area E is different we're not just going back to the old stuff. So in order for us to bring in the new things that we think we're bringing in, we do need to do proper community, get back to the community and consult with them. And this is the time to do it. So I really think that we need to be planning for 4 specific Area E presentations, workshops, whatever, when we go out to the community in February. Or we're going to fail miserably.
Director Smith. Oh, so Mr. Schumacher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to a couple of points that were made. particularly Alternate Director Hain, about, and I believe Director Smith, about grassroots and going back to the community. What we're talking about right now in terms of public engagement is very much around the harmonized OCP and bringing the public up to speed in terms of the necessity around that and what the benefits are to it. And I think, you know, as an outsider to local government up until a year and a half ago, the planning world is a very difficult thing to understand as a layperson. And so we really want to ensure that we have proper communications tools to help educate people to bring up to speed about what is an OCP, what is zoning. And so we're very much in the process of building those tools to help so that when we do go out to the community, that people have a base understanding of what exactly it is that we're doing with this project. And then getting through the harmonization in order to move into the modernization, I think as Coralie alluded to, we have a very comprehensive, or will have a very comprehensive community engagement plan put in place once the HOCP is hopefully eventually adopted.
Thank you. I have Director Smith.
Thank you. I like Director Nicholson, have read version 1, version 2, version 3. And yes, I recommend it to all the other directors. I've recommended it earlier because I think if we don't read it, how will we ever get the people in our communities to read it? So I think we should all take that time and effort. Even now, you only have to read version 3. But one of the things that I have concerns about with those versions is definitions. Something that I see as rural character may be totally different than something from Area B. We may have ideas or differences. So I think that when you look at this harmonized official community plan that's published, there is no definition. So people can read through it. And I agree. I think it's a great document. I think it has a lot of good material in it. And I admire the amount of staff that have worked together and continue to plow along, even working with other areas to bring it all together. And I know that the work that's gone into it's been obviously huge. If you can produce that many pages out of 7 OCPs. But I think that it's really important that there's some definitions that go with this reading material so that people can have a better understanding. Do you have anything that's going to be published on the website for definitions to go with that document?
Through the chair. The definitions, the consolidation of all of the definitions of the OCPs and the zoning bylaws are tabulated on the portal right now, which isn't a public realm. There are some definitions in the OCP, they're in the DP section, so there are some. The definitions will be going into the zoning bylaw, and what we can do is add a notation on the site that that's where they will be. But there are some right now at the beginning of the DPA section, Schedule C. We were advised very early on in the process that OCPs should avoid definitions, and this comes back to a high-level policy document. They belong in a regulatory document.
Thank you. And this was for information. I think staff has heard quite a bit. I see no other hands up, and my speakers list is done. I'd like to thank you very much, Ms. Breen. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your hard work. And we will be recessed for 10 minutes. Welcome back. We're moving on now to R5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Item R5 is a report from the Community Planning Division regarding the Capital Regional District's request for comments on their minor amendments to their growth management strategy bylaw. And the recommendation before you is that it be recommended to the board that the Capital Regional District be informed that the Cowichan Valley Regional District's interests are unaffected by CRD bylaw number 4328.
Thank you. And it's been moved and seconded. Any questions on that? I'm going to call it. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. Is there any unfinished business?
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is none.
New business?
There are two new business items. Item NB1 is a request for a grant and aid for electoral area E, Cowichan Lake, or sorry, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora. And the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid electoral area E, Cowichan Station, Satlam, Glenora, in the amount of $150 be granted to the Satlam Volunteer Firefighters Association to assist with costs for a public CPR course for up to 40 people.
Moved, second, all in favor, any opposed, motion's carried. New business 2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. NB2 is a grant and aid request for electoral area F, and the recommendation is that it be recommended to the board that a grant and aid electoral area F, Cowichan Lake South, Scotts Falls, be in the amount of $150 be given to the Satlam Volunteer Firefighters Association to assist with cost for instructors and supplies for a public CPR course for up to 40 community members.
Moved, seconder, moved and second, all in favor, any opposed, motion's carried. And we move now to question period. Is there anyone in the gallery that wishes to address myself? And must be truly a question, not statements of opinions. Questioners are not permitted to make a speech. Welcome, Mr. Evans.
Welcome. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, on the inspection report, why couldn't we have a slide on that for our viewing audience?
We could have, but the committee didn't find it necessary, so it's generally if the committee wanted that, so.
Oh, we have a person from California texting us and wanting it.
Wow.
So Sheila lifts up her iPhone and gives it to him, but.
There you go. So it is online. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because we get it, we also get it in our package, so it's just not something that we're requesting, but it is online.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Seeing nobody else, I'm going to actually a motion to go into closed. To the public in accordance to Community Charter Part 4, Division 3, Section 90, subsection as noted in accordance with each agenda item. Moved, second, all in favor, any opposed? We'll give 3 minutes for the gallery to clear. Thank you.